So we have here the Paro robot today. This is Kevin, our Paro robot. We have, I think, 3 at the university. One at Sheffield Robotics, another at Catch. I don't know where the third is. But it's what's known as a therapeutic robot. It's a robot substituting for animal-assisted therapy. So this robot was built with the idea that it goes into like care homes, old folks' homes, and so on, for individuals that might be a bit lonely. They might not have much activities available to do, and you just sit with it like a pet, like an animal-assisted type therapy. They have sessions where you have bring cats and dogs in, and old people sit and they enjoy stroking and playing with them. You have this sort of cute little harp seal here. So Paro's modelled after the baby harp seal, something that they've the company that built it has decided is one of the cutest and most vulnerable, needy little creatures. It's got sort of lovely Disney anime style eyes as well, just so that when you look at it you think, oh, isn't that lovely? And we find, if we do bring these to people, that as I've wound up right here, they very quickly want to stroke it, give it hugs, just cuddle it. It's got its little squeaks and its little voices. And it's very gentle, it's very quiet, it's very sedate, doesn't do very much. But that's ideal. That you don't want an animal that's perhaps too overexcited. You don't want a robot that's too flashy for a situation where you are looking for people to be relaxed, be calm, and just enjoy a bit of the company. So Paro works, there's got a variety of sensors in it. It has sensors in the whiskers here, that if you touch them they'll move around. It has little squeaks in its flippers, and it has sensors around the back. If we leave it be for a while, it will just gently fall asleep, or if we cover its eyes, it will think it's dark and slowly fall asleep as well. But it just responds to touch, it responds to its voice, apparently. The manufacturers say it responds to its name, and it will turn if we talk about Paro, but I haven't played long enough with it to notice that one. So Paro, last I saw these being marketed at, and that was quite a while back, they were about, I think, about £9,000, which is quite an expensive device. They're not readily, certainly when I was last looking, they're not readily commercially available. They are for research, they are for medical type situations as well, or rather available through like those sorts of channels. But the variants of these like follow-on robots that have the same sort of idea, same sort of principle, they should, I imagine, be coming down in price. They should be more readily available. But as sophisticated as Paro is, there are plenty of other robotic devices like this, like we think about Furbies, Hatchimals and so on, but they do kind of similar events. They're not quite as engineered as the Paro, but there should be other robots available in a similar sort of I'm sorry, I'm distracted by the seal. It's so lovely. Yeah, there should be some similar sort of robots coming out at some point for the animal-assisted type therapy work. Some of the research that we've done at Sheffield has looked at its value. So these are specifically built with that in mind, but that's not always tested in a sort of strict research setting. So some of the PhD students and staff that we've had at Sheffield Robotics have looked at the value of Paro, how it helps with people's own emotional experiences, how people connect to the seal. So people's emotional connections with other people, does that impact how they have emotional connections with the seal and whether they benefit from this? We've also seen Paro in use for helping people connect with each other. So giving it, using Paro as a topic of conversation between people. We find that Paro perhaps is more of an interesting topic piece to talk about than other robots or other like activities, which is quite fun. But this is the Miro robot. So like Paro, it's built as a animal-like robot. Paro's obviously got a very clear representation of the baby seal. Miro has been built as a general mammal robot. It's got features, it's looking over at me because I'm talking. It's got general features of all sorts of different mammals together. So we have like the sort of rabbit or donkey-like ears, the little dog's sort of style body. Some people recognise that that's a cow sort of nose. And it's structured that way to so that people can connect with it as a mammal rather than having a predetermined belief that, say, it's a dog, it's a cat, and so on. So he likes to wander around, moving very fast as well, like it's got as such a personality like a curious little puppy, maybe. That's certainly how people tend to respond to it. This robot was built by members of the University of Sheffield. So Professor Tony Prescott from in his time in the Department of Psychology, and now currently in computer science, worked with Sebastian Conran, a designer in residence at the University of Sheffield, in their Operation Consequential Robotics, to develop the Miro robot. It's based a lot around Tony Prescott's work, looking at the layers of the brain and the architectures that the brain has. And Miro is programmed in this regard, so it has some basic behaviours, basic actions, and then some slightly more advanced actions that are built on top. So today, one of the most basic actions that Miro has is edge detection, of being able to find the differences between light and dark and responding accordingly. Miro's functions can be turned on and off, and today that has been turned off, so I have to keep on catching it if it's going near the edge of a table. Miro also, like Paro, has a responsive shell here, so that if we stroke it, it can detect that and respond emotionally as such. So it has lights here inside the shell, I don't know if they're coming out, that show green for it being quite excitable, blue for being in a calm sort of state, and red for being in a bit of a agitated emotional state. So Miro is used for animal companionship as well, but also for STEM education, so that we can open up the body, we can have people working through on the programming, we can have people working on the hardware itself as well. So it's got quite a good versatile use. Compared to the Paro, I understand that Miro's about £2,000, so a fair bit cheaper, and it comes in like a developer kit as well, so you can design and work with these at home yourself. Why doesn't Miro have any fur? There's a few reasons on not having fur. So the shell is a lot more straightforward to produce than like a fur robot. The Paro robot, as we saw earlier, used to be a brilliant white colour, and over time, with enough people interacting with it, it needs a bit of care. With the Miro like this is fairly sturdy, it's fairly straightforward to produce, and we've seen from various work that it doesn't seem to matter so much. Now, some people quite like the furry like the soft and furry robots, but this one, it's more of a play robot than you sitting and being passive. Like if we pop Miro down, it might take to sort of just wandering and roaming around the room. You might have a little bit of a break for a while. That people see it as something to play with rather than just sit and hold. I understand that there might be some look in the future as Miro being made in a more animal-like or more realistic look, but I think there's plenty from Miro at the moment already. Yeah, so this is the last of the robots that I've got today. This is my buddy Zeno. So when I was a postdoc at the university for a couple of years back, I spent a lot of my time working with this guy. We were developing a synthetic tutoring assistant. So Zeno would be plugged into a whole variety of other systems, such as the Xbox Connect, like a microphone and voice recognition, automatic speech recognition developed by the computer science team downstairs. And we would have Zeno interacting with kids as a instructor for health and fitness. So we would track children's movements, like their physical activity, and then have them have a quiz about their healthy living as well, which was great fun. We ran that as a event over at the Western Park Museum for about a couple of weeks, and we got a good couple of thousand people involved. And we collected loads of data from kids, how they play and understand Zeno. So one of the main things that I enjoy working with Zeno is that, unlike the other two, we have it as a humanoid robot. It's like a person. And Zeno in particular is facially expressive. So it's got about, I think, 5 or 7 motors in the face that can articulate, and it can create a variety of expressions. Some are very easy to recognize straight off, and some look a bit caricatured maybe. We used it. So one of the main parts that I found interesting working with the robot is children's responses to it. So a lot of the work we had was regarding children's understanding of whether Zeno is a mechanical being or something more like a person. And we found that the younger children that interact with the robot, particularly around the ages of 6 or so, tend to treat Zeno very much as like a fellow child. They treat it as a boy robot. We've quite well established that children consider Zeno to be a male, whether they consider it a male person or a male robot is another matter. But we see younger children tend to play with Zeno and tend to ask Zeno questions that they might have other kids. So they ask questions such as, what's your favourite colour? When's your birthday? Do you have a sister? Do you go to school? And so on. We found when we brought this robot into schools working with older kids as well, so children around like 8 and up, they tend to ask different questions of Zeno. They tend to ask questions about its capabilities, or its understanding, its logic, also its programming. Some children want to know whether it's programmed in Java or Scratch or any of the other programming languages they might know. We have children ask about its knowledge of the world. Does it understand what people are like, and so on. And it's quite fun to see, because we see a difference in children's understanding of people, themselves, and biology that seems to happen round between. That's very different if you ask children age 6 what the world's like, and you ask children age 8 what the world's like. They seem to have this change in knowledge happening, and this ability to grasp a lot of the biology in the world and understanding about themselves. So it's quite cool to see that transition happens with the robot as well. One of my favourite parts is in that mid sort of way, when they are learning about this, they seem to ask questions that sort of make sense you'd ask a person, but really only ever actually make sense if you were asking questions to a machine. So we get questions like, how do you have a bath? That's not something you'd necessarily ask another person. But the idea is that Zeno might need a clean. It's something like a person. It needs a wash. It needs to look after itself, as we all do. But it's also, you can't have electronics in the bath. You're not allowed to bring computers or laptops in the bath. So how does Zeno manage both? We have other questions about children asking whether he has a sister, but whether that sister's been built as well. So it sits in this midway. Do you go to the doctors to get your wires checked? So if children are understanding that, the robot might malfunction, it might have difficulties, but where would a person go? Persons don't go to mechanics, they go to doctors. And that's been some of my favourite research working with the robot. One of the key parts of working with Zeno is people's expectancies are very different from that with the animal robots. They do expect there's a human intelligence in there. They do expect a lot of it. Zeno is built by RoboKind, a company, I believe, in Texas. They have shifted their design quite a bit so that it was a research robot. They're now using Zeno as, I think it's now called a Miro robot, looking for its use in helping support children with autism and ASD. So they have set the robot on lots of simple, repetitive actions, some very clear, unambiguous expressions and statements. And it's the idea behind it is it helps children with perhaps difficulties in managing social interactions, develop a structure, develop an understanding of how human-human interactions might work well, modelled on how the human-robot interactions are going.